Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of Huda's Career Info. I loved my conversation with my guest today because we both share a passion of supporting young people as they transition from the world of learning to the world of work. My guest today is a career coach for young adults, and her name is Sabrina McTaggart. Sabrina recognizes the enormous potential and inherent gifts in each client she works with. She is a career coach who specializes in working with young adults to help ensure they make a successful transition from education to employment. She believes that every young person deserves the opportunity to understand who they are and what is happening out there in the world of work so they can make their next decision with confidence. By working collaboratively with them, she is able to help them put together the pieces of their own unique puzzle as they make important career-related decisions that will profoundly shape their future. Sabrina has a master's in education, specializing in counseling, from the University of Ottawa, and has worked closely with many young adults over the past 15 to 20 years, including her own two teenagers. Listen in and let us know what you think of my chat with Sabrina McTaggart.
Career planning is a process. It is, for most of us, it is a lifelong process, something that starts from around the dinner table, even when your children are as young as 5 or 6. They must accept and hopefully even embrace uncertainty. The young people that are most successful in my experience are those that I can see the urgency in their eyes. I can see I have their full engagement. They are present. There's that urgency of, I want to figure this out. Your right fit career is not going to reveal itself to you. It is a, you are going to hunt it down. It is a relentless search that.
Thank you so much, Sabrina McTaggart, for agreeing to join me today on How Does Career Info and to support career literacy or career education. It is a pleasure to have you here. I always start with the show with asking my guests to define a career term. And for you, you chose career planning. I'm very excited to hear your definition or description of this term and how it relates to your work as well.
It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Career planning. What I wanted to emphasize when I chose this term was an understanding that career planning is a process. It is, for most of us, it is a lifelong process that extends over several decades. And that it can start when children are very young. I think so often we think of careers as something that once we get to college or university, then we start career planning. But I like to think of this as something that starts from around the dinner table, even when your children are as young as 5 or 6. When you ask them, would you rather do this or this? You give them choices and you tune into what their choices are, what their responses are, and help them to foster that self-awareness, being curious about themselves. When our children move into those early tween years, we can notice things like, we can say to them, I noticed that you really enjoyed when we got to redecorate your bedroom, when you got to choose the paint colors and the bedding and the furniture, and to notice their strengths, their natural skills and aptitudes. It's also identifying skills is part of career planning. And again, that can start at a very young age, and parents and teachers and educators and grandparents do these young people a great service when they help them tune into their own natural skills and aptitudes. Another one that is part of career planning that I like to think can start very early is helping a young person identify what is it that I value. That's such a central part of good career planning and good career exploration. And in a broader sense, we're asking these young people, what does success mean to you? What does the good life mean to you? And so, a friend of mine, her daughter just declared, she's a teenager, she's 14, and she just declared that she's a vegetarian. Well, that's a great, you might not think vegetarian has any connection to career planning, but it actually does. That's an expression of this teenager's value system. Is it protecting is it addressing the climate crisis and the environmental crisis we're facing? Is it about animal rights? What is the value that's driving that choice? And that will play into career planning in the future. It's for previous generations, you went to college, you picked a field, you found a good job at a stable company, you worked there for many departments, maybe you moved up in your department. You often worked in the same industry, in the same company for many, many decades. And then you retired and you got the gold watch and your pension. And you never even questioned your next step. Now professionals, young people, they change jobs every couple of years. They might even change industries every couple of years. They will have multiple different roles. And that again ties into career planning, understanding that it is a process, it is a lifelong process. It starts with self-reflection and self-awareness. So it's you will reinvent yourself many, many times over the course of your career. And I like to think of this as presenting great opportunities. It presents great opportunities, a freedom that perhaps previous generations didn't have.
Absolutely. I love your focus on values. I think I agree with you on that too much and how important they are. And I loved your vegetarian example because, it's not easy to connect. Not right away to connect. Okay, you're stating your values and where did that come from? And of course, I used to view it as a lifelong process as well. And with that in mind, can you tell us your career journey a little bit about it and maybe starting high school and how you got to choose what you chose a Master's of Education and then what led you to start your business?
Well, this is a perfect segue because I will tell you my career journey, and values is really at the center of how I came to be doing the work that I'm doing. Um, my dad encouraged me from a very, very young age to be a scientist. He said that focusing on, this was a long time ago, and he said focusing on genetic engineering would be a wise way to establish myself in my career. And he was a real intellectual snob, my dad. He said, you don't want to be a doctor. He said, doctors, they just deal with broken legs and the common cold. He said, what you want to do, he told me this when I was 5 years old, what you want to do is do your PhD in science. And he suggested genetic engineering, which was quite prescient of him. And he said, you will discover some new piece of scientific knowledge that the world has never known about. And that will be your contribution. That will be your legacy. So I was a good girl. I didn't want to disappoint my dad. I went off to high school. I studied very, very hard. I took all the maths, all the sciences. I got accepted to Queen's University. I went to Queen's Life Sciences. My first year courses were math, physics, chemistry, biology, and one elective. Hoda, it was crazy hard. It was a very, very challenging program for me, particularly because I don't really even have an aptitude for math and science. And so I was working really, really hard just to keep my head above water. As you grow up during those university years, by the time I got to my last year, I realized I'm not going to be a scientist. I'm not going to do a PhD in science. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Dad, but I'm not even going to be a doctor. But I was in a real panic because I really had no career direction. I had a student loan to pay off, and I didn't know what I was going to do next. I went to student services on the Queen's campus, and I got recruited by a big multinational pharmaceutical company. And they came and packed up all my stuff. They asked me to take a sales territory here in Ottawa. On my first day of work, I was delivered a brand new car, great big Buick Regal. And I could drive that car for business, for personal, whatever. All my gas paid for, my insurance paid for, and a bigger salary than I ever imagined making. And my job was to drive around to all the doctors' offices in Ottawa and see if I could get it invited into their back private office and, suggest that they would use my drug. And you know what? I found out I could actually do that job and I could do it well. I was successful in my sales role. My sales went up and up and up. I was rewarded with these incentive trips, flown to Puerto Rico and the Bahamas and the Barbados with these reward trips. So on the surface, it all looks good, right? She's got a great salary. Her boss loves her. She's doing well. She's got these trips. She's got these cars. But here's the problem. I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable in my job. And for the life of me, I couldn't understand why, because all my friends would say, you've got it made. I was miserable because that job did not align with my values. And but I was I took a course at Carleton University on career exploration. I was reading books like What Color is Your Parachute? And eventually I decided, so it kept coming around to, you should be a counselor, you should be a therapist, you're a helper, you should go into be a psychologist or psychotherapist. But I knew for my own personal reasons that isn't the kind of work I wanted to do. That just didn't, there were elements I liked about it, but a lot that I didn't like about it. And so I decided I needed professional help. So I went to see a professional career coach in downtown Toronto. And I thought, this is going to get me the help I need. Well, as it turns out, the career counselor, who I can't even remember her name, but she was, let's say, underwhelming in her work with me. She was very lackluster. She didn't seem engaged in the work at all. And I had a light bulb moment where I realized, you're doing a terrible job at this. I could do a better job than you. Wait a minute. I think I want to do your job. And that was the beginning of my journey, was understanding. I went back to school. I did my master's in education, specializing in counseling. And then I had my children. And again, I'm a very values-driven person, and I chose to homeschool my children. Two energetic, rambunctious boys. I chose to homeschool them for all of their elementary years. But when they decided to go off to high school, I said, have fun at high school, and now it's my turn. And at that point, I started my business. And because I could see my boys were entering their teenage years, and of course because I'm so interested in this kind of work and I'm interested in career planning, I had those discussions around the dinner table with my children, but I could see that a lot of their friends, their teenage friends, were struggling, and that was the real doorway for me to say, wait a minute, I think there's an opportunity here. So so I've been at it for about 10 years now. So
wow, that's a long time. Yes. And you still I can still feel the passion in your voice for your work.
I love it. I love it. I mean, it's a privilege. Yeah.
And that's always exciting, because that's part of what we hope our clients will get to a stage where they say, they don't have to say I'm passionate about my work, but when they talk about it, you can pick up on that passion.
Yes.
And I guess that leads me to my next question, which is, who is your ideal client? I mean, who do you work with in your business?
I have three main groups that I work with. I work with a lot of high school students, the majority of whom are in grades 11 and 12. They can see that the end of high school is on their horizon. Perhaps they've watched older siblings or older friends go through the process of choosing post-secondary. Am I going to college? Am I going to university? Am I taking a gap year? How do I choose my major, my course of study? How does that connect to career direction? So that's a big group that I work with. I have worked with students, super keen students, as young as grade 9 and grade 10, but I really think that grade 11 and grade 12 is the ideal time to start this work. I also work with students who are currently in high school, in university or in college, and they're not happy. They don't like their program. Maybe their grades have been so low that they're on academic probation. They're questioning, what is this leading to? Why am I doing this? I don't know why I'm doing all this work. Or they've dropped out. So that's the second group I work with. And the third group I work with is people who have just graduated. They've got their degree and they say, now what am I supposed to do? So those are the three main groups that I work with.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. And then, so you work with teenagers and young adults. If I were to ask you today, what do you wish teenagers and young adults knew about the career planning process? What would you tell them?
I would say, young people, I'm sure you've heard this, Hoda, are often told, just follow your passion. If you find a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Well, wow. I mean, that passion, I call it the P word because it's so loaded. When we think of passion, we usually associate the word passion with the romantic side of our life. So that creates some very grand expectations for work. And so I would encourage young people to, maybe put that word aside and start to think more about, what am I interested in? As I move from the world of being, and I say this respectfully, teenagers, they're moving from the world of being a kid into the adult world. What captures my attention? What am I curious about? I think that's a better question than, what am I passionate? What's my passion? Um, a really big one that especially, and COVID has only underscored this for young people to know, is they must accept and hopefully even embrace uncertainty. I have had grade 11 students say to me, I want a job where I have a pension. Like, who has a pension anymore? Or so often the young people I work with say, I think I want to be a doctor, or I think I want to be a lawyer. I hear that all the time. And I understand that. I'm a planner too. I like certainty and stability. But it's this, I want to check all the boxes. High school, check. University, check. Medical school, check. And then I've got a straight, clear, linear path to success. And so many of us have circuitous careers that have lots of different twists and turns. And inherent in that circuitous career path is uncertainty and ambiguity. Now, what I say to the clients I work with, and I said this to my own children too, is have faith in yourself. You are smart, you are hardworking, you're a fun person to be around, you're likable, you're on the cusp of getting a great education, and your life so far has been pretty terrific. So use all of that information to say, you know what? I don't know what my 5-year plan is. I don't know what my career goals are for the next 10 years, but I do know that I'm hardworking. I do know that I learn and I take responsibility for my own career, and that I'm not going to be living in a cardboard box, homeless under a bridge somewhere. Have faith in yourself. So I think that's what I wish teenagers would be able to internalize.
Passion is definitely a loaded term, and there are many arguments for and against using it. So I like your perspective on it for sure. And as a career coach, we're working with young adults. So there are misconceptions about the services that we offer. For most of it's like either write a resume for me or help me get a job right away, right? So what other misconceptions, or please detail on these ones as well, if that's what you have in mind about working with a career coach?
I think the biggest one is that a career coach will help me find my perfect career and my dream job. and that she will have some test or assessment that we can do, and that's going to help me and I'll be set for the rest of my life. Well, I like to disabuse young people of the idea that there is such a thing as a dream job. A dream job, think of even the word dream is very ephemeral. You know, I don't care what job you have, there is a challenging part of your job. Like if you're getting paid, if you sign a multi-year contract with the NHL and you're signing your contract for hundreds of millions of dollars, the downside of your job is probably you're going to get smashed into the boards every day. There is a downside to every job. There is no such thing as a dream job. And you're doing yourself a disservice to think that you're going to find that. And so your career coach does not have a crystal ball that they can gaze into to foresee your future. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions. And the other thing is that I just have to show up. I just have to show up, and she's going to kind of, somebody said, do it on me. Like, can you do it on me? And it's really, I always say to the young people I work with, this is a very active process. There is nothing passive about this. The young people that are most successful in my experience are those that I can see the urgency in their eyes. I can see, I have their full engagement. They are present. There's that urgency of, I want to figure this out. And they aren't just working in our session, they are also working in the other parts of their life. They are working to address this. Are they listening to podcasts? Maybe they're reaching into their own personal network to talk to people, their neighbors, their parents, the friends of their parents who are doing interesting work. So maybe they're reading a book, maybe they're watching YouTube videos on different careers. They have this amazing thing called the internet. So they're searching. I like to say to the young people I work with that your career, your right fit career is not going to reveal itself to you. It is you are going to hunt it down. It is a relentless search that you are going to hunt it down. And that in itself implies action. That's the big word. You must take action. And so that connects to the other big misconception which is a career coach will write me a perfect resume and she will get a job for me. She will help me find a job, preferably within a week or two. And you know what? I know that job hunting is very challenging, and there is a whole bunch of things you need to do to be a successful job hunter. And it actually isn't at all the focus of what I do as a career coach. I help young people figure out, what kind of work do you want to do? What sector, what industry do you see yourself in? What role do you see yourself playing? But I don't actually work on, here's how you get a job.
You really summarized a lot of the work that many career coaches do. And for you, specializing with young adults is definitely a great time to start. And so what is the best part about your work?
Oh, that's an easy one. I am the person that loves to hear people's stories. So if you're standing in the lineup at the grocery store and you strike up a conversation with me, or if I end up sitting next to you on an airplane and you want to tell me your story and it's even remotely interested, that's what I want to do. I want to hear your story. And, this is going to be a bit of a humble brag here, but I think we all have a superpower. And my superpower, Hoda, is seeing the potential in the young person. And so for me to sit across every single day and hear the stories of these young people, some of whom are feeling discouraged and even despair, and COVID has only added a layer to that, to be able to help them see their potential, help them to understand the process of career exploration, help walk them through the process, the many steps, help guide them through the career research they need to do, help them understand what an informational interview or a coffee chat is. and then help them connect that to the action steps they need to take to begin to achieve their goals. That is a privilege for me every single day. And I'm not sure when the novelty is going to wear off, but it certainly hasn't yet. So that's what that's the best part of my job.
It absolutely highlights why you love your job too. Again, I can see you like excited talking about it, and
Yeah.
that's awesome. Realistically, though, every job has some challenges, right? Like you were saying before, is that no perfect is easy, no job is easy. So, what are some of the challenges that you face as a career coach?
I think a few of the challenges I face is young people who have strongly held misconceptions about the world of work. They get a lot of their career information from Netflix and from movies, and so they think that I'm going to be a lawyer because I really like that show Suits, and it makes being a lawyer look so cool, and so not being open and willing to explore beyond the subset of careers that they know. They know teacher, lawyer, doctor, police officer, that kind of thing, but not taking the time or the energy to expand beyond that and to challenge their assumptions about what a career is really like. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is a young person who will not give themselves the gift of time. They will not, they even, it happens that sometimes we do all this work together and they are still unclear. They are still lacking. I don't know what I'm interested in. I don't know what it would be like to take an engineering class or a course in graphic design at college. And they will not allow themselves the gift of a gap year to take the time to explore, to sample, to learn and explore outside of a lecture hall. I like to say there are so few times, we know this at our age, there are not that many times in your life when you can say, let's hit the pause button here. Let's take a pause and I get to do whatever I want for a whole year. I'm going to learn by doing. I'm going to sample some things. I'm going to test drive some things. And they are absolutely, I'm going to say, rigid in, I must get to university. I must get to college because I don't want to be left behind. And I say to them, if you structure a gap year well, if you use your time wisely, if you understand what your options are and how you continue to learn and grow outside of that lecture hall, I guarantee you, you will not be behind. You will be light years ahead. So yeah.
You brought up the gap year, and sometimes resistance comes from parents as well. So, what
Yes.
do you say to parents who have our children who might be, sold on the idea of a gap year, but they have that concern? And I was one of them. That's why I always like to bring that up. Is that will he ever go back to university? Will he waste I have two sons as well. So will he waste that 1 year in the basement playing video games? So what do you say to parents who would be against the gap year?
Yes, absolutely. The first is that, a gap year must be well structured. It must be well planned. There will be goals in place, and that planning has to start early. Ideally, it will happen in grade 12 or in the summer right after grade 12, because when all of your peers head off to college or university campuses and you're sitting at home in the basement, that can be a very, very upsetting experience for both the teenager and their parents. So it's understanding that for most young people, so much of their life, since the time they were toddlers, has been planned and structured and organized. You're going to go to this classroom, you're going to do these projects, you're going to do this math homework, and in the summer, you're going to go to this camp and you're going to take this piano lessons. And all of a sudden, faced with an entire year to do whatever you want, that just seems overwhelming. And I understand that, but it is not an insurmountable barrier. There is a way to wrap your head around it. The other thing I would say to parents is, university or college is going to cost you many, many thousands of dollars. Do you really want to send your teenager off to college or university when you can already see that they lack organizational skills, that they don't have the maturity for the self-management, where they are not able to, screen out all of the distractions? And college and university have a whole lot of distractions. Do you really want to start writing tuition checks for thousands and thousands of dollars when you can, if you're really honest, you can acknowledge my son or daughter is just not ready yet, I've had parents who to say to me, well, when I went to university, I just partied my fool. These are the parents talking. And they say, I partied my full head off for a whole year and I got kicked out, or I was on academic probation or whatever. And I say, do you want that for your son or daughter? Is that a good way to spend? Because I've watched these students go off to university when they're not ready, or go off to college. And it's so discouraging and so demoralizing when they fail their courses, or they feel lost, or they say, I don't even know why I'm in this program. So recognizing that there are many, many resources out there to help you plan a gap year, and you just need to tap into them. So
Thank you so much for your sound advice, Sabrina. I totally agree with that as well. And these were all the questions I had for you today. Was there anything else you would like to add, or any one more advice to share before we wrap up?
yeah, I would say understand that the world is changing very quickly. The world of work is changing very quickly. And yes, that presents enormous challenges, but I think there's great opportunity in understanding that we are tossing out some of the old ways of doing things, that you have to proceed up the corporate ladder one rung at a time. A lot of times people are inventing their own ladders, or here's another one, that I'm going to have to go back to school. I'm going to have to go do my MBA. I'm going to have to step out of the workforce for 2 years and give up my income for 2 years and go back and do an MBA. You've probably heard the term micro credentials, where there are thousands of ways that young people can learn hard skills, soft skills, technical skills through these micro credentials that are often stacking, that will make them incredibly attractive to employers. So that yes, the world is uncertain. It can almost feel frightening in some ways, but there is great opportunity. And I guess the thing I would end with is, I don't know about you, but I cannot read the headlines, the Globe and Mail, the New York Times, whatever news sites you go to, you cannot read these days without hearing about the massive labor shortage that is happening in our country, whether it's the restaurant and hospitality industry, the skilled trades. I heard a report about veterinarians being in short supply. We desperately need nurses. What I say to the young people I work with is, man, did you ever get born at a good time? You are perfectly positioned, because by the time you get your education, you are going to have your pick of jobs. The baby boomers are retiring in droves. That's going to open up all kinds of opportunities for you. So the labor shortage is not good for the country, but it is a benefit to the young people who are choosing what kind of work would be a good fit for them.
Absolutely, yes. And that the opportunities are out there. It's just about finding what works for you, for sure. And then micro credentialing are changing the world of education. And sometimes we have to revisit our values as well and say, okay, is a university education as important as it used to be? Change is happening, but I think it's all exciting for the young people and for us too, as we explore opportunities.
Absolutely. To understand how the world of work is changing, and the such cool jobs that are happening out there, the cool, carbon capture and robotics and artificial intelligence. And these jobs are not just for STEM kids. It's not just for the kids who have an aptitude in math and science. All of those industries, artificial intelligence, they're going to need people in finance and marketing and sales. How does that, how do you fit into that world? That's I hope young people will see that as exciting and, as you said, full of opportunity.
Me too, for sure. And I think that's why we do the work that we do.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time, Sabrina.
It was a real pleasure to be here anytime.
Thank you for joining episode 18 of Huda's Career Info. My guest today truly showed what it is to have a passion for one's career. Sabrina's love for the work she does was evident throughout. What is your favorite part of this chat? You can connect with Sabrina McTaggart on her website, sabrinamctaggart.com, or on LinkedIn. I am your host, Hoda, and until next time, keep reflecting on your next challenge.